I think 90% of the ministry of a church happens between the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So the 10% that happens on the weekends, it's still important, and there's something that happens there that doesn't happen in other places, and it needs to be as well done, and you need to get a taste of something you're going to get on Sunday, in the rest of the week on Sunday morning, so that we're going to be friendly, we're going to do all that. But by looking in people's eyes as they come in, by noticing who's missing, by seeing people as they get connected and get disconnected, that leads to ministry all week long, helping them get stronger, helping them get in the game and help other people, creating a shepherding culture. Now the back door isn't flapping open as you're trying to reach new people. And so for us, it's one of the essentials of a church that we're tracking who is stepping out, who is missing. All right, we're going to call them.
Welcome back to the Church is a Team Sport podcast. I'm Lance Wigdon. Again, I'm with Jim Putman, author of A Church is a Team Sport. We are glad you are here. Once again, the reason that Jim and I are doing this podcast is for you, the pastor, minister of a smaller church. Jim and I both have a background with smaller churches. We care about the smaller church. So does the Lord. That's his bride, and we care about you that are shepherding that community, and so we're doing this podcast for you. This week, we're talking about essential number 4 as we're going through this list, which is really definitely interwoven in the middle of the book, Church is a Team Sport. Chase the strays. When I first met you, the church I grew up in, somebody wasn't there on Sunday. We just wondered where they were. We didn't make a phone call. We didn't go try and find out where they were at all. And, then they'd show back up and, oh, we missed you last Sunday. And that was basically it. And so it was a very kind of like you're throwing a party every Sunday and you invited everybody and you hope that your friends and family come to this party. And if they're not there, you go on with the party and you don't know. But you definitely changed that paradigm for me. And when people weren't there, you would call them. Tell me about that back in the day.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a home where my father he's just like the consummate shepherd, right? Mm-hmm. He knew his sheep, being an elder, pastor, shepherd. He would tell me, he would talk about Ezekiel chapter 34, mm-hmm. where God says through Ezekiel, I curse the shepherds of Israel because they don't chase the strays. Mm-hmm. They don't bind up the hurting. They only take care of themselves. They were sacrificing the sheep for their own good, mm-hmm. instead of being a shepherd, right, and caring for the sheep. And so my dad, growing up in the home, he knew who was new, he knew who was missing, and it was in part because of his view of that. He was always busy, so that led into, doing a good job of shepherding, but not doing maybe as good a job with raising up shepherds to help shepherd. Mm-hmm. Now, he became better at that as he was older. And so when I came back to the Lord, in part because he shepherded me when I was mm-hmm. astray, mm-hmm. pursued me, I went into ministry, and I just had this core value because I'd seen it, because of what it had meant for me, that was going to be a part of what I saw in Scripture. Jesus left the 99 to go find the one, right? So there's this whole, John 10, where it talks about the good shepherd and how the hireling runs when the wolf comes. Mm-hmm. And so as a small church, it was, we started in a house. If somebody was missing, it's just, hey, how you doing? You okay? We missed you. And then we started, I remember in the book, I talk about how, we were growing. We were up to 300, 400, 500 new people coming. on every Sunday afternoon, I would call every missing person, and I would call every new person, and then pretty soon it became Monday or Sunday night and Monday night. Well, I think it was a Tuesday I came in and I was super tired, and Brandon, who was one of our first hires as a young man, he said, "Why are you so tired?" And I said, "Well, I had to make 160 calls
on your day off."
On Sunday night after church, and Monday, and and I would set my schedule based on that. If they were missing and they were really struggling, I'd set up my counseling appointments. I would reach out to people. Sometimes they're on vacation. Hey, are you okay? Just checking. Anyway, 160 some calls, and he said something. He goes, "What? Why are you doing that by yourself? Aren't you supposed to be kind of equipping us?" And I was like, yeah, wait a minute. How did I fall into this same old trap that I had not liked about my dad at that stage? I was falling into, I care about the sheep, but the job is that we do this together. It's a shepherding community. And so I started passing that out. And so after 25 years, this is a value. I still, if I'm sitting behind the stage because we have 3 services on Sunday and plus 1 on Thursday night, if I'm not seeing them in the crowd, and I always stand by the front door to see as they come in. Now we have so many different doors they can get by me, and so sometimes I call people that were actually there. We have a way of tracking who's there and who isn't through the attendance cards, but we still have people that drop through the cracks. But I think God says these people's heart is to pursue and care for people. And so if you look at the essentials, it starts out with abiding in Christ, and then it's reaching the lost, and then it's connecting the unconnected. So it's getting people into connection. Then it's chasing the stray. So as people coming to know Christ are getting connected to the body, getting them connected, but then people can fall out of connection. So as they fall out of connection or start to leave connection, and sometimes people are upset and we got to work it out. Sometimes people just get busy and pretty soon the connection goes away. What if we catch that early and like, hey, you're missed, you're cared about? Oftentimes, this is the way I think about this. Oftentimes, you have people that have been disconnected for a long time and they show up and they call and we need counseling or we're going to get divorced. So you come in and it's a complete mess. And how did it get there? Well, they got a little bit off of the right path with Jesus and together, and they got mad at each other or whatever, and maybe they got in a fight and they decided not to go to church. And as time goes by, it didn't get resolved. They started getting bitter. They started resenting one another. They stonewalled, or they vented, or they whatever. And as time goes by, it builds until now the engine's blown. Right?
But it didn't happen overnight.
Right. Well, what happens if they got into a fight, they didn't show up for church, and they got a call, and it's like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And we're being honest. We're promoting being honest, and we're being honest, and we're pressing into that. And then they say, yeah, we got in a fight, and, well, let's talk about that. Now it's just a fight. It's way easier to fix than 6 months, 8 months of separation, of not walking with Jesus, not forgiving, not abiding. They've gotten angry. How much quicker could we get to solutions if we're actually pursuing and caring for and meeting people and ministry? And so, a lot of churches, it's like 90% of their energy goes into the weekend service, and it's a show, and everybody comes in and leaves. I think it should be. I think 90% of the ministry of a church happens between the weekends. So the 10% that happens on the weekends, it's still important, and there's something that happens there that doesn't happen in other places, and it needs to be as well done, and you need to get a taste of something you're going to get on Sunday, in the rest of the week on Sunday morning, so that we're going to be friendly, we're going to do all that. But by looking in people's eyes as they come in, by noticing who's missing, by seeing people as they get connected and get disconnected, that leads to ministry all week long, helping them get stronger, helping them get in the game and help other people, creating a shepherding culture. Now the back door isn't flapping open as you're trying to reach new people. And so for us, it's one of the essentials of a church that we're tracking who is stepping out, who is missing. All right, we're going to call them. Now, sometimes people are like, well, I don't want people to pursue me. Okay, well, if we're going to err, we're going to err on the side of caring too much. And if you get offended about that, then that's on you.
And that doesn't really happen that often. On a
There's some people who are like, hey, how'd you get my number? And I want to show up and not be connected and all that. And I go to that church because I don't want people to know who I am. Well, you came to the wrong church.
Right. Well, and I get it from their perspective, because you look at the numbers, and if I want to hide, I still want the good of going to church.
It's not boring because it's done well.
Yeah. And but I could just sit here. I get all the goods and without any kind of relational work. I get that, and it's easier to do that in a bigger church. So I feel like that's one of the things that we have to fight against. But to your point, if you focus on building up leaders that understand their role in chasing the strays of the group that they're in charge of, or in charge of the people that's in their number. Yes,
some people in their small group weren't there. And then you're like, hey, everybody text, or would you check out on that person?
Right.
Now you're equipping them. You're getting them to understand, hey, we do this together. It's not just an event we go to and check a box.
Right.
Relationship. The church encouraged one another daily, Hebrews 3 says. They met in the temple courts, large group, weekends, and from house to house. How often? Daily. You're creating a church is not something you attend on a weekend. You check a box. I go to church. No, I am a part of the church. There's things that happen on the weekend and are important, and they play a part. And there's things that happen in that don't happen the rest of the time. But we don't just fit an hour and 15 minutes into our life and call that the Jesus hour and 15 minutes and hope that's going to counteract everything, the world and our relationships and all that. No, we're called to be a part of a community, and the shepherds have to model that. They have to live in that themselves, let people call them and check on them, and then we set the tone for a community. And so the leaders, the elders, everybody, the staff has their list, their life group, their men's group, the people in their ministries, and those people are helping to call those people, and it starts this chain impact that keeps people in the faith and fights for that.
Mm-hmm. And if you have a culture of that, that is the way to keep a large church small as far as being relational.
Yeah. Again, I would say people are like, I don't want to go to a big church.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is always, does God want a big church? A lot of people. Sure seems that he waits to return because he wishes none to be lost.
Mm-hmm.
He's sent us into the world to reach people. 3,000 in one day got baptized, 5,000 next week. It seems like that we should be reaching people, and excited people are coming. There is this celebration of, look at all these people. I'm not alone. People are getting saved.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, though, people are becoming known.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just you got saved and you checked a box. I prayed a prayer. I got baptized. No, you're born again into a spiritual family, and that takes time, energy, and effort. So you're not just throwing Jesus in. Come on into my life and just you fit over there, Jesus. Right? I always use that analogy of the basket, and you've got your life and
Mm-hmm.
how it all fits, and your relationships, your sports,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody says, "Hey, Jesus wants to save you." Great, throw him on in.
Right. He
Right?
fits in the cornucopia
He fits
of
right
my
over
schedule.
here.
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, "No, I'm the king. I don't fit where you tell me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take over. If you don't want me to take over," and you don't always know that at the beginning, but the gospel is you're submitting to the Lord Jesus. You're surrendering your life to him. Church is God's idea. And a church looks like God's idea looks like. It's not something you attend. It's a lifestyle. It's a community. It's a spiritual nation with a purpose and a family, and which takes time. And the rest of life has to fit in
Mm-hmm.
according to God's plan. And And so there's things that he'll throw stuff out. No, this doesn't. No, I like that there. No, that's got to go because it takes too much time away from my purpose for your life, and the pruning part of your life, and part of leadership, shepherding, is knowing your sheep so you can speak into their life where they're at. They're all in different places. Knowing them, caring for them, and not just taking care of them, but that analogy only goes so far. You're to equip the saints for works of service so the body of Christ can be built up. They all have a position to play, so you're also a coach.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just a shepherd who cares for their needs. You also lead. They follow. When they don't, you pursue. You also coach them to become part of the body of Christ with the giftings that they've given so that they're a team. That's where Church is a Team sport came from.
Mm-hmm.
But a good coach shepherds his team. Every sports team, if that guy cares about them, he doesn't just want their best on the field. He cares about them personally, and he wants them to care about each other. And then we get more out of this together than we would as an individual sport sort of a mindset.
100%. Yeah. Coach, getting other coaches that can follow these cultural norms and do that in there with the people that they are leading and shepherding is the goal, and that's what will continue to grow, not just grow in numbers, but grow people that are going to be more Christ-like. So we've been doing this a long time. 2020 comes around, and I don't think there has been a time, at least in American history, that is as unique as what COVID brought to this country. We started fighting over the weirdest things. I think about down in the South, where I'm sure there's a lot of people watching from. You have people that will root for a football team, and then another person will root for a football team, and I mean they're automatically they're at odds with it.
Or not pals.
But they
Alabama and
Auburn. That's exactly right. But even in them fighting over that, it's relational. They like the fact they're fighting over that, and they like the fact that that's something they do. Not true after 2020. Things like I'm going to wear a mask or I'm not going to wear a mask. And it has vaccine, non-vaccine. We became more and more separated. The amount of emotions and the amount of power that we gave these different topics, and they were real relationship breakers.
Yeah, and then social media and all the vitriol and anger of both sides, and and then, condemning people's hearts, and he's either stupid or uncaring, or and I mean, in my mind, I'm like, this is the dumbest stuff, especially if you look at it historically. I'm like, a lot of this stuff's going to go by the wayside. Mm-hmm. There'll be more, politics. It's breaking relationships at a rate I've never seen before, and this is the line that's going to families. So now you're chasing the strays, and you are interacting with somebody, and the reason they left the church is they're doing fine. So that's not it. But they're intentionally getting out of this flux, so to speak, over something that is, I would say, trivial, but it's now in 2024. It's worth breaking relationship with. How do you handle that when you're on the phone with that, or you interact with somebody leaving the church? Well, most churches aren't set up for what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's all weekend. People don't actually know each other's hearts. They just attend, which is so then now they can't attend, and which going to church, attending. I mean, how big a loss is that?
Mm-hmm.
You don't really know these people. They don't really know you. And so now, why not just go online? I mean, online became a big thing. And by the way, around the country, churches were dying, closing down. Attendance was way lower when they actually could come back. because people got used to just sitting in front of a TV and not really being known or knowing other people.
Yeah, after a year, that's a habit. Now you have a new habit. Your habit was to go to church on Sunday. Now the habit is not there anymore.
If you want to watch it online, you watch it online.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting. People weren't connected. If it was pretty shallow connection around information, not around each other, knowing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because church has been, a place you attend, and you go 1.1 times a month if you go to church, and most people aren't in small groups. They don't know each other. They put on faces. They like the music. They do whatever. And so it just wasn't set up for the church to thrive during that time. Now, our church here, because we're in life groups, because people knew each other, and the shepherding community, we went through that with flying colors and grew incredibly after that and through that, which was amazing to see. But the relationships were built, so it wasn't just about an idea, vaccine or no vaccine. No, we may disagree on that subject, but I know your kids, you know mine.
Mm-hmm.
We've had experience together, so it wasn't the only thing that we knew about each other was vaccine or no vaccine, or mask or no mask. You knew each other's life. So that built like relational collateral so that those things became something we could actually argue about because we know each other, and we'll work it out because we care about each other. When all you have is an idea and we have differing ideas and there's so much vitriol and that's all you know, it's easy to break.
It's like one or two strings are broken versus like the 50 you just alluded to, like kids and history.
Yeah, and you'll work things out, especially if part of maturity is actually loving God and loving others and letting them love you, and you're in relationship. They're like relational ropes that hold you fast when the storm hits.
Mm-hmm.
And, everybody likes the idea of having good music or a good sermon or whatever, and being able to, and flexibility and no accountability. And I can serve where I want to serve or not, and nobody's asking me to do anything I don't want to. And that all works fine until tragedy hits.
Mm-hmm.
And now you want to be known. Now you want to know your pastor. You want to be able to call and get counseling. You want people to help you, but you didn't set your life up that way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that. You just have a place you attended.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have people that serve in that church because everybody's just a consumer. 10% of the people do 90% of the work. They're burned out. Most people are consumers. They're not really connected in relationship. They're not really cared about. They don't know anybody else. And so there's this isolation that has hit. You're in the middle of a tragedy, and you're anxious or scared or angry. Your relationships are broken. And so a lot of the church folks that lived that sort of, I'll attend church when I have time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really serve. I'm not really connected. The pastors are just teaching a good lesson online. Well, why do I need to come to a church to listen to a good lesson online? I can watch that guy on TV that's online, and it led to an isolation in church, and it's impacted people. They weren't discipled to begin with, so they weren't ready for all that happened relationally, informationally. They're being tossed around to and fro by every wind of doctrine, by every scary thing. They're freaking out. And then they and so the state of many Christians in America is really rough because of the methodology they've been living out for church and their idea of what maturity is. And they don't really have time for relationships because that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
They can be friendly, but they're not known and they don't know others. And so the shepherding aspect of church is every day. We all play a part in it. We allow people to shepherd us. We shepherd them. We do this together in a community. Now, when the wind and the rain comes, Jesus said, "For the man who hears my words and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock." Most people have not put the Lord's words into practice in their home,
mm-hmm.
in their church. The version of church that God gives us, his design, is right there. It's not what we've come up with in America. So we built the church according to the wrong plans, and God has no obligation to bless those plans.
Mm-hmm.
The wind and the rain comes for the Christian and the non-Christian, and what's left is often, because it was built on sand, it's demolished,
mm-hmm.
and then there you are. And my hope is that we'll actually get back to the Lord's design. The job description of a pastor isn't just sit in my office 30 hours a week, come up with a great message, great video, great worship, big show on the weekends, gather the biggest crowd. No, that's not the definition of a leader in a church as Jesus defined it.
Mm-hmm.
And others are like, well, I have to do it all, and I'm going to shepherd these people. I'm going to care for these people, and that's part of the definition. But your job is to equip the saints, and to create a shepherding culture means you make disciples who make disciples, and we do it together. So, oftentimes, we turn it into a show, or give ourselves as pastors all the responsibility, and we either burn out or we're aloof, and the people suffer.
Mm-hmm. And I really think this is why I love doing this podcast. Church, the book itself, Church as a Team Sport, is about how to break that cycle, because you're right. You're coming up with physical limitations. You can't shepherd all the people. You can't hold everybody accountable. You weren't intended to. It's not even what Jesus came even close to modeling.
Yeah.
But that is the American church, and we have bought into that everyone looks to us and we have to do all this work. The reality is it is a team sport, and if that team is building and working to build a culture that does these essentials, is for today it's chase the strays. It will be a church that is built on the rock. It will grow, and
there'll be stability.
Absolutely, because it feels like there is not a time when there is a storm right now in our culture. It feels like it's stormy, and it's only getting stormier and more divisive.
And we were built for relationship with God and relationship with others. You don't have it in your life. There's something key missing.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that lack of stability of relationship, more online time, you're interacting with a non-human, more busyness, less relationship time with God, less relationship with each other, not a place where you can be open and honest and share what you're thinking. Building a culture around the things we do leads to mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Things like depression, anxiety. It leads to people snapping when things happen. It leads to, I think, the suicide rate amongst teenagers. We're raising a group of kids who are unstable, in part, as Christians even, because the form of Christianity we adopted is not Jesus' form, and it has a direct impact on our own mental health and the mental health of others. And then as we get away from what we were designed for, the devil in the darkness has a lot more room to play and lie and deceive and maneuver, and he's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just time for us to get back to the Lord, his playbook. He's the head coach. We do it his way. He's right. We get back to what the early church did, his method. You don't keep his teachings, Jesus' teachings, but divorce them from his methods of living that out. And again, I see all kinds of pastors that are trying to come up with new fancy ideas. We've said this before. Brandon, I love this, here for years, but he kind of coined the phrase, God didn't ask us to innovate. He asked us to imitate.
Mm-hmm.
And getting back to the basics and living that out is, the knowledge that leads to relationships and skill sets as we do this together on a mission is what is worth living for. It has eternal blessing. It has temporal strength built into that recipe. And right now, more than ever, our people need it.
That's right. It's tough. It's tough, but it's worth it. And we know it's worth it to the point we've given you some tools. This podcast is a tool, but we also have more tools on jimputman.com. If you have any questions, go ahead and email us there. We'd love to answer them. We're out here to help you and help you build God's church. We'll see you next time.